Now on to part two, which is basically history and politics and what the mainstream calls revisionist history. Whether or not you believe it's a negative thing or not, I believe all history has been rewritten for their purposes. And there's a saying: those who own history own you. Something to that effect. We're going to cover some U.S. and world history, the Hegelian dialectic again, and intelligence. And moving on to George Washington, look at this image. It's riddled with occult symbolism, and there are the two pillars of Freemason. He is the most famous Freemason, I believe, that ever lived. And so Washington as a Freemason, and they've really adorned him this way. It was my intention, it was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more fully satisfied of this fact than I am, meaning he was fully aware that the Illuminati had spread to the United States. In fact, I believe he is part of the Illuminati and Freemasonry, and because the Illuminati infiltrated Freemasonry. Freemasonry is the mystery religions. They were one and the same to begin with. So we have also here, interesting to note, you saw the Baphomet here with the coming on to the women. This, how I interpret this, is the sons of God, the angelic being, coming on to the daughters of men. She has no wings here. Also, I think the significance of red is there as I don't know the significance exactly, but I believe that there is a significance of red. I believe also there's a significance of this broken pillar. You see this in other depictions, like breaking the law. And according to the Bible, the angels that left their first estate that did this are actually in chains and are bound because they did this act that was against the law. So I believe that this depiction is representing that. Now we have Washington laying the foundation stone for the Capitol building. This is his apron, and you can see that is clearly Masonic. They are reenacting this in commemoration of that event that Washington did. Here is the Capitol, inside the Capitol prayer room. He is kneeling, and what is he kneeling to other than none other than an Egyptian pyramid with the eye of Lucifer. And this is not a Christian symbol. I cannot believe that Christians cannot see this at all. It's hidden in plain sight. It is unbelievable to me that we can be so deceived this way. Here is Washington. Here's that single pillar statue within the, I think that's the Washington Masonic Memorial. Underneath the Capitol dome, this is key here. 72 pentagrams adorn this painting, which is called the Apotheosis of Washington. And apotheosis means the attainment of godhood. So he is here now as a god. He is showing you as above, so below. This is now also a sword, but it's in that pose of the Baphomet. There are virgins around him. There are all these pagan gods around. This is Athena, I believe, Neptune, and Vulcan. I don't know all of them and how they're depicted, but 72 stars or 72 pentagrams also refer to the 72 demons, spirits in the Kabbalah. And so you see here in the middle IHS, which is the Jesuit logo. And so in the Jesuit logo itself, you also see these straight and crooked rays. And so there are 72, and they like to call them names of God. But in this case, I've come to understand that they are the demon spirits in the Kabbalah. And we have now an example of the 72 in the Imagine memorial for John Lennon. And there are 72 black and white, 36 each, with this Masonic checkerboard around this. You can read all about the Kabbalah and the founding of the United States. And that mystery religion itself, Jewish mysticism it's called. There was a big news in this Leonardo da Vinci portrait of Mona Lisa where they found the number 72 in the eye. So there is a significant number, 72. In Borobudur in architecture in Southeast Asia, there are 72 Buddhas around this. So a significant number. I don't know the full meaning of that. Let's look now at who and what goddess is on the top of the Capitol dome, and it looks like some type of American U.S. hybrid. Of course, she has stars adorning her, and this eagle and feathers all around. She has a shield and a sword. Just to let you know that there's another goddess out there, and she is Athena. She is always depicted with a shield and sword. She is a god of war and wisdom. She also is depicted with usually with an owl, and the Roman counterpart is called Minerva, and so there is the owl of Minerva, which is understood. She doesn't have that owl at the Capitol dome, and therefore the owl is placed onto the Capitol grounds, and so you can see the two eyes here, the body, and the two legs. And that owl, they love the owl because the owl sees at night, and they love to operate in darkness. So here we are. This is the pyramid, and that owl's at the apex of that pyramid, perching on top of that. And this is east-west version. There's the old Capitol Washington Memorial with the circumpunct, which is just the circle around that Capitol. You look at here, this is Lilith, and Lilith is a demon goddess. She has owls as well as other creatures. Minerva, again, Roman Minerva, and this is a sculpture in New York City. This is an Illuminati pendant that is attributed to the Illuminati, and you can see the owl. Of course, they let us know that the owl represents wisdom. That is the exoteric meaning, and you can see this in the academic world where the wise owl is all of what we know that the owl represents. Here's another god, Mars, that is a sculpture at the Capitol building. So these gods of war, they love war, and they do this in the name of God. Now moving on to the owl, there is a Bohemian Grove that all of our dignitaries go to, and heads of state and heads of corporations, and you can see the owl with the lightning bolts in this season greeting. He wears the Bohemian Grove owl, and you're going to see what the Bohemian Grove is all about. Alex Jones, who is a conspiracy guy, actually blew this open and infiltrated and filmed these guys doing what's called the cremation of care. And that particular ritual, we'll get into that next, but you can see who these are. These are old cronies. It's a all male club, and they do homosexual acts there, and they invite people nearby from San Francisco of the gay community that come up and service this. And believe me, it's pretty sick, the stories that are come out of that whole all-male situation. This is the cremation of care that was filmed by Alex Jones. Now, I have to warn you that we have somebody like Alex Jones that infiltrates this. I believe that they want this information to come out. I don't believe Alex Jones, we can trust everybody that comes out with the conspiracy information, and they could be coadjutors which are expose certain aspects, and that's how intelligence works. They can expose certain aspects but not expose all aspects, and therefore there's something at the end of this that I want all of you to understand fully, which is really the end of this presentation, and I believe really the message of this entire presentation, the most important message. So going on this cremation of care, you see the owl. This is actually not a stone owl, but it's been made up to look like this, and so they do this cremation of care. That's exactly that. Cremating or destroying your care or your conscience. So when they do this ritual, they can do war and kill people and all of that without having a conscience. You can also see here that they wear the Dagon hat, which is the fish god hat. All that pagan stuff looks like Catholicism, and it's one and the same. Moving on, and just depictions of owls. Here's that cremation of care ceremony back in the day. It's an old club. Look at him. He's dressed as a druid. or some type of a priest or monk. National Press Club and the owl. They also have the Aladdin's lamp there, and you saw that in Freemasonry. And they just happen to have an Aladdin's lamp at the base of that owl at Bohemian Grove. There it is. Look at them now doing the sign of Horus and the uh, sign of the Il Cornuto and the owl in the background. And there just so happens to be a small owl depiction. I'm not quite sure it's there, but I'll tell you, I am not surprised that they do this kind of thing just to throw you off guard. Does it really look like an owl? Is it really on the dollar bill? Oh, I don't know. Is it part of decoration? Boy, they really throw us off in that sense. Now looking at this Bohemian Grove once again, Midsummer Encampment. That means that this gathering is at midsummer, and they do the midsummer ritual just like Satanists do a midsummer ritual and pagans do a midsummer ritual. This is high satanic holidays. I'm going to throw this out there. It just so happened this past July 20th, which was the opening of Batman, and while Bohemian Grove was in session, this shooting happened, and there were reports of people inside the theater having some guy prop open the door from the inside. So there were more people involved in early reports, and now you have this lone crazy person. Looks like he's been involved with ritual abuse and mind control and what have you. Totally delirious. I'm telling you, how fantastic as it may sound, this stuff is happening. This is Bohemian Grove, and you can see My Little Pony. Why would they be doing this? And so how fantastic is it to understand that this is what they indoctrinate us with? Please, don't let the wall of your mind keep you from the truth. Trust the elite. Bohemian Grove t-shirt. He's wearing an owl. This is real. It's happening. The indoctrination is out there. This is Michael Jackson with this adornment. Looks like an owl mask. And of course you see the Eye of Lucifer here, and people going in this ride, all kind of Alice in Wonderland kind of weird symbology going on, and I can't interpret all of that. Here's Lady Gaga, 2009 VMA Awards, wearing the horned owl mask, and of course Harry Potter with his owl, the Justice, and you see the checkerboard, Masonic checkerboard. This god looks like scales and justice, and the owl here, some type of a goddess working there. Now, showing you, Washington was involved with the urban planning of Washington, D.C., and therefore you see the occult imagery. I mean, this stuff is very not conducive to traffic patterns and what have you, but they want to put this in the streets in this fashion just to show, get their geometry in there. The pentagram may be broken at one point by not permitting the converging lines to touch. When used in black magic, the pentagram is called the sign of the cloven hoof or the footprint of the devil. That's Manly P. Hall, that Freemason, and here's a broken pentagram, and we see exactly that, north to south with the down point at the White House. And here's that broken pentagram. That street does not go all the way through. And so you will go on the History Channel, and the Freemasons on that channel will tell you, well, it's not even a complete pentagram, so how can you say that it's satanic? Well, here it is. The star with 2 points upward is also called the Goat of Mendes, because the inverted star is the same shape as the goat's head. And you saw that in the Baphomet. When the upright star turns and the upper point falls to the bottom, it signifies the fall of the morning star. Okay, and there you have morning star, reference to Lucifer falling. Now you have here also a pyramid in the street layout, and that pyramid, if you count blocks, the lodge itself is 13 blocks from the White House. The lodge is here, and you can see the lodge is in the alignment of the Washington Monument rather than the White House. So interesting alignment there. It's a little bit off, but I'm showing you that there is a possible alignment there. The pentacle has within it the pentagon, and the pentagon is another revered geometry. And so you see the pentagon. It just so happens one of the bloodlines, papal bloodlines that I described to you, the Farnese family, which is heavily involved in Jesuitism. I believe they even started that whole idea. And so military palace with military complex, and that connection with Rome and that Pentagon. Here's Washington in the form of a Baphomet. This caused so much controversy that it was going to be outside the Capitol building, but they relegated it to the Smithsonian. And there is a similarity between this statue of Zeus, but I'll tell you a very odd similarity is why would you want to have a revered president naked and then pointing upward and downward with the sword, as in war? And so very similar aspects of as above, so below. You see this in the depiction underneath the Capitol dome, the apotheosis of Washington. He is now a god in this form. And of course you have Uncle Sam with the star on top, and the Satan or the goat of Mendez with the star on top. Okay, the George Washington Masonic National Memorial, and we're going to analyze this building and what's in it. Here's George Washington and that pillar and all of these dignitaries now gathered there. This is, I believe, that statue. Not sure if they moved this or not, or it's the same one, but anyway, you can see the Masonic checkerboard. And here's that single pillar, Masonic. Oh, he's immortalized in this. Within that building is Benjamin Franklin, Freemason. You can see here he does the Pledge of Allegiance, hand to heart or chest, and he holds the key. And so this is all Freemasonry. The key again to the mysteries, the mystery religions, and that ceremony, the key to the city. I think that's exoteric meaning, but in this case, we can understand through the writings that it is the key to the mystery religions. And Benjamin Franklin again, and Masonic regalia. You can see that hand to the chest. I believe this is a different depiction. I think that's Woodrow Wilson. I'm not sure why I put that there, but I do have Richard. I'm not Richard, but oh gosh, I forget this actor's name. But anyway, it's skipping my mind. But anyway, we'll look at the down-facing pentagram, the Maltese cross, and of course the elements of the Jewish temple, and that is the Ark of the Covenant. And so you have this depiction that looks and feels and smells like the real thing, but it's not. Knights Templar statue, or in the Masonic Memorial. This is key now, this room. It's the Knights Templar room, and you see the cross and crown of Knights Templar. This is York Rite Freemasonry. And within that room, you can see this cross. It actually has the IHS. And so now a connection to Freemasonry and the Jesuits, the IHS in the cross, and the cross and crown. There is the stained glass window. This man is pointing as above, so below, and that below is toward the skull and the ground. So you have all of this symbology, Christ with this sun and moon, and all of this. Now you see that dove. It's the same one that Aleister Crowley has in his Ordo Templi Orientis. You all see that Ordo Templi Orientis have this vesica Pisces, some type of a yoni sign. It actually is the female part sign, and you see that in iconography and also in the Ordo Templi Orientis, Aleister Crowley's logo for his secret society. Knights Templar again, cross and crown. You have the Masonic aprons in the National Memorial, and the skull and bones. And skull and bones again. And now, looking at the architecture, and I'll show you, this is very peculiar, and you have to understand anatomy this way. Okay, so here's the foundation stone with the square and compass, 1925, I believe. And now you have here the square and compass on the grounds. When you look at that square and compass on the grounds itself, the square or the compass is the male aspect. So the compass is toward the heaven, and therefore you have the building, which is the phallic symbol, going skyward toward heaven. You have the square itself, and the square is earth and female. And so this square, you can see if you understand anatomy, this grounds design is the female part and the canal and that female part. So you can understand this union between sexes, and in this case you can see the anatomy and the architecture of the skyward male part and the earthward female part. Interesting how they do this. Now let's look at an interesting thing here. This is the tomb of George Washington, and you've seen this before on Masonic diplomas, and the use of two pillars, or the two obelisks in this case. And you saw that in Aleister Crowley's tribute, two obelisks. So this is Washington's tomb. If he's Christian, why is he using this? And why is he using the symbology of Egypt? If you think it's Egyptian revival, that is their definition of this whole thing, and you can try and finagle the history yourself and say that this was Neo-Egyptian architecture at that time, and therefore they adorned the tomb this way. I'm sorry. Look at it for what it is, and look at the rest of what Freemasonry is. This is Jefferson's tomb. Tombstone. Franklin, his parents have the obelisk, and he actually has the plate. So he didn't get the obelisk. For Rockefeller and the obelisk. Now the most famous obelisk in the world, the Washington Memorial. And you can see that and why. Now you see the understanding of this as above, so below, the use of the reflecting pool to signify that. The obelisk is an Egyptian sun symbol. It is phallic in nature, representing the male penis, a symbol of generation, or G. So you got the two symbols of generation, the male part and the female part, and you can see Washington and the mall as representing this phallic symbol and showing that. I believe presidents now face this when giving their inauguration and getting inaugurated into office. This is the new layout, and the new layout has this shape, the Vesica Piscis shape. That's the conjunction of two circles. That is the female part, and you can see the female part here in conjunction with the male part. Appropriate architecture and layout of landscaping. And so another obelisk in the world is at Vatican. At the Vatican, St. Peter's Basilica. And you can see that that is being used as a sundial, and of course the cardinal points east and west being used that way. The facing, I believe this faces toward the sun, and so you have the obelisk. This grounds itself of the Vatican is in the shape of a key and a keyhole. And so if you look that on your Google Maps, you can see that that is a key all the way going down with a key end in this portion over here, but that is the key arm or the trunk of that key. The obelisks around the world, and I'll go through this. Again, Freemasonry is global. This religion is global, and is the religion of the elites. Singapore, Chinese obelisk in Panama Canal, and you can understand why that is. They cooperate with regard to trade. These are secret societies that do things in secret, and they organize themselves, and they are in control of the world. The United States, Brazil, and even North Korea. And so I believe that, yes, we might think that North Korea is isolated, but I believe that these leaders are left into position, and these are social experiments. And this particular experiment is a poverty-stricken, extreme socialist communist state. And that is an experiment on the people, and you can see what they do in this environment. They literally cry at the death of Kim Jong-il, and they pant and wane. It's almost like a competitive thing. If you've seen depictions of these people crying within this communist state, how psychologically they control people that way. And it's a desperate situation as well. This is a Buddhist obelisk in my hometown I can't understand why they're using the obelisk, but you'll see later of that connection of Buddhism and Hinduism and the other world religions. Now, obelisks in Israel. So yes, Israel is not immune to it. In fact, here we have the Supreme Court building of Israel in Tel Aviv, and this is an Illuminati building, and you can see the pyramid here. And this is riddled with occult symbology, including the pyramid with eye of Lucifer. Here's the obelisk. Here, this is Dorothy de Rothschild Grove. Now we have a connection between even global banking families, the Rothschilds, being Jewish. This is them gathering with the Israeli leaders and saying, look at this building that we funded, and they, under condition of using their own architect, designed this building, and it was constructed. Interesting things about Zionism, and really the culmination of this presentation is about that, and I want you to stick with this and understand the biblical perspective of what this is all about. There is a 30 steps here, and it just so happens to be 3 levels in this library going up to the library. So 30 steps with 3 last degrees, 33. You have this phallic symbol with a column and this yoni female part going on here, as well as some weird courtyard, and it looks like in this case a stairway to a cross, and it could be something like trampling the cross. But all of this symbolism, I can't say that I have it accurate, but very close. Now moving on, and we'll get into that the ramifications of this later. We have the 2 pillars of Freemasonry. This design for the World Trade Centers are essentially that. The pillars of Hercules, Jachin and Boaz, whatever you want to call it, they were Freemasonic. This was controversial. I read about the design of this. Yamasaki was the architect, Japanese, Minoru Yamasaki, and he has a couple buildings here in Hawaii that have some World Trade Center motifs. Here's a Rockefeller and this World Financial Center. I'm going to show you the explosive nature of this. Buildings don't go down like this. I'm an architect, and I can tell you, look at the pulverization, ultimate pulverization of this. You can also see plumes now in a fashion of explosion, upward and outward explosive action. Buildings do not go down symmetrically, and you understand what demolition is all about. This is World Trade Center 7, which was never hit by anything. And that building also went down. This is a missile strike on a building. This is an example of how buildings behave when they're struck by explosives. Columns go out, but the superstructure remains intact. That's why we can design buildings that go through fire and still remain. There's never been a building that has fallen due to fire. And so we can understand how buildings, when demolitions even go wrong, usually the building collapses and then tilts over, and the superstructure still remains. It does not collapse onto itself like this. And you can see, again, the dust and the pulverization of an explosive demolition. Here you can see squibs, which are quintessential for demolition. Come on, people, you got to understand this. This is a news broadcast of the 47-story Solomon Brothers building, building number 7, close to the World Trade Center, has also collapsed, and you can see the building still standing. So this is predetermined news that is leaked out. You can see now that building collapse, World Trade Center 7, and the quintessential kink in the building. With all of this explosive action you can see out the windows, and that's not fire. That is due to the demolition. This World Trade Center complex, all of the World Trade Center complex, World Trade Center 7 has to be here, and you can see even the buildings that were above the collapse still remained partially intact. They partially collapsed and were damaged by the building, but this particular World Trade Center, I don't know how many columns were in there, but it's a standard steel structure, completely collapsed flat to the ground. And you can understand, please understand the motives of all of this. This is all planned events, planned to get us into war. I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure whether they were going to be able to contain the fire, and I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the best, smartest thing to do is pull it. Pull it is a demolition term. And they made the decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. This is World Trade Center 7, and this man made a lot of money with his insurance policies on the entire World Trade Center complex that day. Now looking at the Pentagon building, and this particular footage is the only footage that was ever released of a supposed plane ever hitting the Pentagon building. This Pentagon building is riddled with security cameras, not only on the building itself, but across the street. All of that was confiscated during this, and you would think that they would release something to the effect of a plane hitting a building. Nothing of that sort was happened. In addition to that, this building has anti-aircraft batteries. If anything was even approaching this building, it would be shot down. So there's another clue as to what was allowed to happen in this case. Also, I wanted to go back here to the buildings itself. This building was designed with a steel and concrete core. That was the elevator shafts and the central core. That central core had no reason to collapse in that manner. We also have now a year later, and there was a ritual done. I believe this was 1 year later on that anniversary, and you can see the ritual and the shape of an eye coming down this procession. These lights were up as a memorial, and they were up for about 33 or 34 days, and very peculiar number to have with that memorial. The new building itself is a hybrid, a triangular up, triangular down, 1,776 feet high. It was done by SOM. SOM is Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, a very prominent architectural firm, and the building itself was called Tower 1 in the office, and given the patriotic, of course, name of Freedom Tower. It's interesting to note that even the layout itself is kind of a similar layout to the pyramids of Egypt, and I can't say that for sure that is the case. But one thing in particular that we should note here is this is probably one of the more famous images of George W. Bush reading this book at 9:05, and it happened to be a book named The Pet Goat. I believe this is no coincidence, and it was very big news that this moment in time in this classroom is when he learned of the second plane hitting the World Trade Center towers, and that America was under attack. This is the book itself, storybook, and you can see the dragon and the magic on this book itself. This is the Pet Goat story. It's essentially a story about a goat that wreaks havoc and becomes the hero in the end. So we have this goat fascination. There's also a picture of George W. Bush holding this book upside down. So there is another peculiar thing. I believe this is all staged. My Pet Goat, and you can read about that and that historic event. Also, in the classroom itself, on the internet you'll get a different take on this, but I believe phonetically this describes that tower. Kite, kit, steal, playing, must. And if you actually read it phonetically, kite referring to something that you control in the air, kit sounds like hit when you actually say it, steal as in steel building, playing as in plane. When you actually hear it phonetically, it sounds like plane, must. So plane, must, hit, steal. Kite, in addition to that, describing the event. So peculiar things going on. I just wanted you to be aware of that. This video, which I'll show, is about George W. Bush apparently saying that he saw the first plane hit. And this is odd things going on. And there he is describing that. This is Rumsfeld describing the Flight 93 as being shot down, in Pennsylvania. The result of all of this is, of course, war. And this is an example of how sick we have become in the Western society with regard to war. This whole campaign was called Shock and Awe, and Jennifer Eccleston being determined to be Miss Shock and Awe, that kind of broadcast going on. This is war is absolute hell, and I can't understand that we can sit in our living rooms and tolerate this type of description of an event called shock and awe and be in utter entertainment with regard to this. And there's the blowing up of, I believe that's Baghdad. And also look at the result of this, brother of Afghan leader. The Afghan leader himself was involved with oil and westernized, and his brother said to be paid by the CIA. So this is all about war, Afghanistan. You can see the opium surveys in Afghanistan and the production of opium in that industry. And so we should understand the underground workings of these organizations like the CIA. Moving on, this is the capital of Kazakhstan, which is Astana. And this is it's supposed to be done this year, 2012. And you can see the Illuminati Freemasonic symbolism. There's the pyramid itself with the sun symbol on it. You see the elements in the decoration. You see pillars. You see this very weird upper room on the top level of this one of the buildings, and this hand within this triangle and this altar. I believe that represents man. And of course, you have all of these global leaders, religious leaders, coming to this building. And in that middle room, one of the upper rooms, is a round sun table, and all of the religions gather around this. And so globalization, universalization of the religions coming together in a one world order. This is the MI6 building, British intelligence, MI5, now MI6, and you have the building itself. This is designed, well designed, and as an architect, I can testify to how they put the symbolism in here. And if you can see what this animal is, and I have a clue to that animal, it's an owl. And so you can see, yes, it looks very squared off, but these are two eyes here, and you can see the horns on the owl and the 2 feet here for the entrance. You can see that more closely, and I hope you can understand that is distinctively an owl. You can also see here steps and this pyramidal shape at the top of that. And they love that owl because the owl sees at night. This is the CAA building, which is the top building for representing actors and actresses. You see the 2 opposing triangles. This is Century Center or Century Plaza in Los Angeles, and then you see this eye shape in that floor plan. This shows you the production of opium. Now, looking at a building, this is the Denver Airport building, obviously the Freemasonic logo. This shows you that it was designed by the New World Airport Commission. Nobody knows who that is, but reference to New World, New Age, and the New World Order. And so you can also see the layout, one of the largest airports ever constructed in the world. There's a swastika layout, but I can't testify to that. These are different directions that planes travel in. It is also said that this airport has levels underground and is connected all the way to Phoenix underground through tunnels, and so deep underground military bases. The artwork in this, 2 of these have since been taken down. Apocalyptic artwork. You see the fires, and you see racially these women are dead, and Native American here, and Caucasian, and they are in coffins. You can see here somebody that is war, that is killing this peace, and you see these women in anguish. You see here now war and death is now conquered, and the one world coming together in this rainbow. Oh, it sounds so fantastic, but look at what they put in this hole. Who is behind it? This is a gargoyle in the airport itself. And this is what they want to bring in: New World Order, New World Government, New World religion, bringing it all together. This is the headquarters of the Bank of America, and these ominous paintings as well. You see the first painting here, Masonic, and you see this child here in the Masonic square pose, the Masonic checkerboards, pyramids, black suns. You have here now some type of puppetry going on. Now again, the one eye symbolism we see, the burning tree, weirdness going on, and these people looking on and saying, is this what we're going to head into? Now the second image, you see all of these sort of deities dancing around in the sky, and look what we have on the ground, a net representing entrapment, and this whole world hazmat masks in chaos. You even see Auschwitz-style concentration camps and burning. That seems to be what's going on here. Look at the white flags and surrendering going on, all apocalyptic stuff. This looks like the post-apocalyptic era, and now the burying of the dead looks like equality perhaps, and now working class. And this new socialist world order, please be aware of what's going on, even in the symbolism of the artwork of these major corporations. Now, with regard to 9/11, going back on 9/11, I'd like you to watch these videos that just show you briefly with some commentary of how obvious it should be for all of us that this was a planned event, and it was done locally, or not by terrorists as we would imagine terrorists to be. Now, I just want you to understand they have radicalized Islam, and yes, there is a radicalization on that side of the coin as well as this side of the coin. They fuel this upcoming war that we see and hear in the news that is being perpetrated. And so look at these videos, and I'll explain briefly what they're about. Now we're going to take a look at a number of videos with regard to the events of 9/11. This first video shows George W. Bush describing his experience on that day, and he describes seeing the first plane hitting the World Trade Center.
And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to wonder exactly what President George W. Bush knew about the attack, and when he knew it. According to the official White House version, it was at this moment in a Florida classroom that Bush learned the second plane had hit the World Trade Center and that the U.S. was under attack. But here's what George Bush himself said almost 3 months later when asked about September 11th.
I was sitting outside the classroom waiting to go in, and I saw an airplane hit the tower of a TV. You know, the TV was obviously on, and I used to fly myself, and I said, well, there's one terrible pilot. And it said it must have been a horrible accident. But I was whisked off there. I didn't have much time to think about it.
Now, wait a minute. George Bush was told about the second plane while he was inside the classroom. So you just heard him describe seeing the first plane crash on television that day. But that's impossible. No one saw the first plane crash on TV on September the 11th because the videotape of it didn't surface until the next day.
This next video on 9/11 shows Donald Rumsfeld at a conference interview, and he is describing Flight 93, the flight that we all have been told went down over Pennsylvania, but he describes this plane as being shot down. So let's look at this.
I think all of us have a sense, if we imagine the kind of world we would face if the people who bombed the mess hall in Mosul, or the people who did the bombing in Spain, or the people who attacked the United States in New York, shot down the plane over Pennsylvania and attacked the Pentagon.
This video is of a BBC report which came out about 20 minutes prior to the World Trade Center 7 building going down, and you can clearly see that they're reporting something that hasn't happened yet.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today, because of, course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working properly, and we know that down there near the World Trade Center there are 3 schools that are being turned into triage centers for emergency treatment. And I know that over in New York Harbor, where the famous Statue of Liberty is.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan. Perhaps we can rejoin her and follow that up later.
This video shows Larry Silverstein in an interview describing 9/11 and specifically what they did with building number 7. He uses a demolition term called pull it, which means to bring the building down.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Now I wanted to pause it here because you can see at this point where the top of the building is. I'm going to move this video back slightly, and you'll see that the penthouse moves first and collapses first. And so you can see the World Trade Center 7 was a classic implosion type demolition. And when you can look on the internet at an interview with a demolition expert, and they describe it specifically as a classic demolition. Looking on at some architecture here, this is the capital of Australia, Canberra, and you can see the Masonic architecture. You see the keystone here. I can't decipher everything, but distinctly there is a pyramid structure at the very top of this. You can understand that. We have also the black and white checkers, or the black and white duality within the design. There's the interior. Also in court buildings of New South Wales, and you see those buildings as well. You see lodges of the same in the same area, of course, in Australia. The Louvre itself has this checker pattern. This is designed by I.M. Pei, and this is the Louvre pyramid. Supposedly, I haven't counted, there are 666 panes of glass in this. I can't confirm that or not, but you can see obvious symbolism here, as above, so below, with a reflecting pool. And this is underground at the Louvre, and that building now these opposing pyramids. You see here now Canberra and this pyramidal shape as well. This is Hampton Court, which is royal in England. And then of course, you see the pyramid and the Capitol building there. I can't say that they're completely related, but I believe they are. Something has to do with that design. This is the IRS building on the East Coast. I believe it's one of the Carolinas. And you can see now, instead of the checkerboard symbology, you have the two pillars symbology with the stripes, black and white stripes, and of course all of the Masonic symbolism there. Looks like those are pointing upward, and of course you have the pyramid with the capstone on there on the American symbolism. Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the pyramid shapes. Even the logo has the pyramid shape, and the building has a reflecting pool behind it. And then moving on to the public library in Los Angeles. This is actually a video game depiction of that library. So you see here, actually, in actuality, they have the sun in there, and then in the video game they place the eye of Lucifer in there, and then also an ear. This video game it's called L.A. Noire, very popular video game. Within that building is the Luciferian torch of enlightenment, and then you have these occult symbols with these looks like sphinxes. This is Bertram Goodhue here in Honolulu. His government buildings are Honolulu Hale, also the Academy of Arts. And so if you want to be an Illuminati architect, just play the game and be a Mason. This is the Rockefeller Center, and this is a depiction. The author of the song Jerusalem, which was sung at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, actually designed this or is part of this understanding. I think there was a book written or poems written. We have the square, the great architect of the universe, and that is not the God that I know. It may sound like it, feel like it, smell like it, but it's far from it. You can understand that in the writings. And of course, Rockefeller Center has Prometheus. Prometheus stole fire from the gods, or wisdom, i.e. from the gods, and then you have this all of these astrological symbols around. That's Prometheus there at Rockefeller Center, so you can understand that the elite have a religious symbol. This is a religious symbol. Moving on, and we'll get into this in the later section, but the logo of the Olympics, the design of the Olympic Stadium with these pyramid shapes, and even the Olympic mascots having the one eye symbolism. We'll get into that a lot later. Now looking at the Statue of Liberty and understanding what this statue is all about, it really is a sun goddess representing Semiramis. And you can see up above her is the rays, the sun rays. And you can see the similarity between Hera and the facial characteristics of Hera and the Statue of Liberty. Look at Europa, another goddess with the adornment like Hera, and the sun rays depicted. So look at that face and understand that that face is very similar to the same goddess. And so all of these goddesses, their roots are Semiramis here. And you see the coin here. Look at the nose and the brow. Here is a depiction of Semiramis, beautiful sculpture. And Semiramis is Nimrod's wife, going back all the way to Babylon. Now, Frederick Augusta Bartoli is the Freemason who designed that sculpture, and you can see his Freemasonic roots. The base of the Statue of Liberty has the square and the compass of Freemasonry. This was a gift of the French Freemasons to the American Freemasons. Now you look at the sun goddesses depicted in the past. This is Baal worship, and you can see the sun goddess. Now all of these goddess and the depictions of the sun rays on the head. Going into Venus, Venus Columba was a goddess of the Romans. You can see here on this album cover she's holding a light of enlightenment at the top. I believe that these spikes are a representation of the sun. You also see this shell oil as an example of the use of that shell. Also the Vatican has the shell example as well. Here's Venus Columba, and you can see the similarity between that coin depiction, Roman coin depiction, and how they stand here as well in these coins. The Bank of England, this is an insult to us, hoarding money and giving us food in this case, but nonetheless it's a goddess. Now we have more depictions. Here's Columbia pictures. So Venus Columba, where we get Columbia, and then also the Columbian faction of the Illuminati, as I described earlier. And we have here showing her with the torch of enlightenment and adorned in this robe. Funny thing is, I noticed that the hand itself is more masculine, and so it always makes me wonder if they're putting androgyny in plain sight here. And I couldn't get a real clear image of this, but it looks a little bit larger than what it should be. But anyway, I might be seeing things, but I just noticed that. Look at the stepped pyramid and the pedestal here. This is one of the original logos of Columbia Pictures. Clearly a pyramid here with the Torch of Enlightenment. And then we have Columbia Calls, which is now getting you to enlist in the American Army. So they understand that it is a goddess that they're going. Now here's a depiction of Semiramis in Hollywood movies, and you see the crown depiction with the sun rays, appropriate, and understanding that they need to do that. Moving on to Lucifero, and you see the torch of enlightenment and the sun rays, and therefore you see Marilyn Manson with these daggers representing that. You have skull and bones up above. Oh, a lot of occult symbology there. And then Lady Gaga with her halo, looks like sun rays done in a hairdo. This is a Masonic description of the same goddess. Looks like Mary of the Catholics. And you see the triangle up above, enlightened triangle. You see the beehive and the pillars of Freemasonry. You also see now Mary of the Catholics. Mary is not to be worshipped, and she even calls Jesus her Lord and Savior. And so they have deified Mary in this fashion. Moving on. And then you look at a memorial near the 9/11 site, and what may look like a Statue of Liberty is not. Looks more like Mary in this case, and you have the sun ray behind her and her holding the Twin Towers. This was a ritualistic event, and I really hope you can understand when you went through the 9/11 version to show you with the pet goat and all that. So we have the goat Baphomet and the Luciferian torch up above. Prometheus and that whole ritual, which is the Olympic ritual, is Prometheus' ritual of running and stealing fire or wisdom and enlightenment from the gods. And so that is done every 2 years, Winter and Summer Olympic Games. Now you can understand Prometheus, the movie. The ship was named Prometheus, so it went out and was stealing knowledge from the gods. And that was a very strange movie to understand what was going on. Here's the Colossus and the similar depiction of the sun rays. Moving on with torches in Freemasonry, the torch on the back of the U.S. dime, and used in education. Now we'll move on. Now this is one of the most interesting symbols that reveals how our history has been played out by people in the same club, in the same fraternity, in the same secret society. So we have here the sign of the Master of the Second Veil. This is a Masonic sign, and it's called the Hidden Hand. And so you can understand that by looking at who is doing this symbol, of how history has been shaped by these people. And so there is the symbol. You can see now Freemasons doing the symbol here and with their aprons. One Freemason here. The most famous depiction of the hidden hand is Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was a Freemason. And you can see here as well. That's Napoleon. This is his the one before him, which is Louis XVI. Well, you can see the prominent Knight of Malta, and you can see the hidden hand. So that's the Maltese cross there. And here he is again. Robespierre, involved in the French Revolution. The hidden hand. I used to think it was just military, but it's dignitaries. It's all people of all walks of life doing this. Here's now across the sea and Washington himself doing the hidden hand. Not very many people have seen this and know that he does the same thing that Napoleon does. And so it seems like it might be a military symbol, but it's not. It's Freemasonry. You can see this man here. And Washington himself and the man behind doing a variant of that, and we'll see that later also in pop culture being used. Here is one of the, I think, naval commanders in the Revolution. So war officers doing this. Now you have dignitaries. I believe this is partially the signing of the Declaration. I could be wrong. One of the events in history. I don't know all of these people, but this is the Western side of society. You might be able to recognize them in history. I feel like sometimes I need to go back and label these. Now look at this. Here's Lincoln. The top hat is very prominent in Freemasonry, and the Worshipful Master does that. But look at his companions there. His military officer looks like, and one of his, probably his cabinet members there. And then look at depictions of Lincoln doing this. Now Lincoln was assassinated, and he was also trying to print different currency, so he could have been assassinated, and I'll show some of that later on in this section. Booth, his assassin, look at him doing this hidden hand. Now military officers in the Civil War, and moving on. Albert Pike was a Confederate general. We don't have him doing the hidden hand, but we do have, look, these officers on both sides of the war doing it. And now we have other people. Booth, I think he's the founder of the Salvation Army. And presidents. And poets. I think this is Ruskin. I forget his name. This is four-time Prime Minister of Great Britain. Apple something is his last name, I believe. Sarah Palin, his husband. Now this could be the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not sure, but there's something fishy about that family. And look at here, we have James Dean and his friend doing the hidden hand. So that is the Western hidden hand depiction on this plate. Now moving on across the sea, and we see the same hidden hand in communism. Here's Karl Marx. Karl Marx actually was fired by the New York Times to write the Communist Manifesto. There are other aspects of these guys which I won't disclose now, but in this case, look at them all. Here's Trotsky, Lenin, all doing the hidden hand. Founders of communism. What's going on here? Both sides. I've come to find out they've been shaking hands behind closed doors for a very long time while keeping people at bay with this Hegelian dialectic. Creating the opposition, creating the enemy, two people warring against each other, and if you don't have an enemy, then what are you fighting against? And so they create these dialectics: communism against capitalism, freedom against tyranny, and this type of thing going on. So what is Gorbachev doing? He's living in the United States. I believe he has a mansion in San Francisco, and they've been doing this for a long time. Look at the hidden hand, even in a large sculpture of Lenin. Not Lenin, but that is Stalin. Continuing on, the Gestapo of the Russian Gestapo, and you can see all of them doing the hidden hand. Freemasonry unmasked as the secret power behind communism. So you have now communism, the West, all being founded by Freemasons, poets. Now here's Rothschild of Europe. This is, I believe, Mazzini, who is the founder of the Thug Mafia. And just to keep in mind that these countries, these organizations, they set people up and take them down when they don't need them anymore. And sometimes they don't cooperate, and they go down. They won't go down without a fight. But we see this everywhere. There are internal struggles, but for the most part, people want power, and they want a country, or they want an organization, and they are handed power in that way. And when they need to take them down, whether or not they've established their own private army, they go down fighting. In this case, you see Skull and Bone Society and this member with the hidden hand. Now continuing on, this is Mozart, I believe. You can see a sort of a Maltese cross there. I don't know all these. Again, this is Nietzsche. He's the founder of the psychology, and was famous for saying there is no God, and he ended up in an insane asylum. Look, as a young boy, they grow their children up in the doctrines. This is Bartoli, the architect for the sculpture of the Statue of Liberty. There he is again. This is the hidden hand in history, shaping history on both sides, playing the Hegelian dialectic. This is Yugoslavia, I believe. This is, I forget his name, I think South America. Bolivar as his name. Now look at this. This is Egypt, and Mubarak, he's doing the hidden hand, and he did not go down without a fight. And so revolutions are started. The opposition starts the revolution, and they get ousted out of office and get taken down. So he was part of it, and now he's out of it. Now you see Jay-Z with this hidden hand and the dual symbolism there. Here is one of the actors that passed away, River Phoenix. He has a brother, Joaquin Phoenix. And so anyway, he's not only doing that hidden hand, but he's doing this eye. They also sacrifice their own, ritually sacrifice. This is an evil empire, and in the industry they do this. So we have here hidden hand for the Beatles. You can see the hidden hand being done by Paul there. I used to like this as Morris Day, and look, he's pointing at the man doing the hidden hand. Johnny Depp on the cover of Rolling Stones, hidden hand. Now you see that variant, which is the sort of the hang loose sign, which is a sign in witchcraft of the moon, and then the hidden hand there with De Niro. Oh, I'm sorry, Al Pacino. There's Robert De Niro. De Niro and his friend on the set of Taxi in the hidden hand, showing their allegiance. Kanye West, another rapper, and then you see the single pillar, Freemasonic. One of the singers, I forget him. Oh, and then of course, look, he doesn't have a sport coat or anything to put the hidden hand in, so he puts it underneath his arm. Tom Hanks on the cover. You can see the hidden hand and the Masonic checkerboard. Let's get a clue as to what our history is. They own our history. They've told us lies. They've revised the history, and they've sold their propaganda to us. Now let's look at another sign that we can see in public that might be a tangible clue as to who is who and whether or not they're a Freemason or not. And this is handshakes. There are various handshakes. You see knuckle, the thumb on the knuckle, a thumb on the knuckles again, and various knuckle ones. And in public, they they do it differently, and so this is not something that you can readily see. You can see that, but you can see two Freemasons here at least doing that handshake, and so it's the thumb on the knuckle distinctly that way. Another Freemason here doing that handshake. You can see the similarity of that. This may or may not be, but I'm just going to here to tell you that there is a distinct handshake, and you can spot it if you're aware of it. This is a video on the internet. It's a very ominous video. Here's the patriarch, Father Bush, and the son coming and sitting down next to him, and the father offering his hand to the son, and the son actually giving this Masonic shake. Very distinct on the internet. You can see that. Just try and look it up. George W. Bush handshake with son or something of that nature, and you'll see this video on there. But it's something to be looked at as the Don or the mafioso father getting the adoration of the son and the respect of the son, with a mother on the inside. Ron Paul speaking at Jesuit Georgetown University. Now, I'm not trying to place him there and saying that that's the case, but there's a lot of things fishy about who Ron Paul is. They like to take a census on who is listening to someone who is constitutional and against the Federal Reserve and doing all of this stuff that is exposing these people, getting very little support. He's got a lot of support on the young side, but never gets elected, but still in the spotlight, saying everything right. And they take census on this stuff. But you can see here across the table that distinct pressure of the thumb on the knuckle. There it is again. Very interesting. His wife and daughter, again, are Freemasons. You have here Tony Blair and the Pope. Very distinct handshakes going on. Look at this. Very clear that this is Masonic. So the Catholic Church is heavily into this. Look at that. That is not a normal shake. So nowadays we can spot these things out. And across the table, interfaithism going on there. Moving forward, look at these handshakes. Very distinct. Look at this. Ooh, pressure on the thumb. Very clear. This is John Paul. This one doesn't look like it completely, but I'm just showing you people who we know are Freemasons. Whether or not we catch them in the act or not. Getty Images, look at that handshake. This looks very clear. This is Sharon, I believe, from Israel. To the Masons of Peace, Yitzhak Rabin, King Hussein, and Bill Clinton. This was an ad taken out. So you can understand even the opposition is within this. And they are all Freemasons. Working out this plan for a new world order. Moving here, here's Abbas and Ariel Sharon. Well, that's not a handshake, I don't believe, but anyway, just to let you know that we're trying to be reasonable here. I believe Yitzhak Rabin was a Freemason, and you saw that in that ad. Now, moving on to Gaddafi. Gaddafi's been taken out and killed, and so here's an example of him working with the CIA. He's allowed to be in office and run his country, and now taken down radically. That's how they work. Across the table, oh, the famous Gorbachev and Reagan era of taking down communism. It's still there. Okay, look at the handshake with science and technology and NASA. Here's the young Barack Obama. Here's the Beatles. Look at this interesting handshake with, of course, the Freemason. And then the best friends, Jay-Z, Kanye. Look at these guys. He is heavily involved in world affairs. This is on the internet. You can see Lady Gaga, left-handed handshake with Oprah. It's very clear. I know this is a blurry image, but just to show you that she actually positions her hand to give a Masonic shake. And you can see a little outline of the thumb there. It's very distinct that she positions it that way. And now looking at an old design of the nickel and the handshake. That's not the handshake. They just show it as a sign of brotherhood. Moving on with history. Let's read this through. While the general public has been led to believe that communism is a movement of the workers' Soviets to destroy capitalism, Pawns in the Game proves that both British and American intelligence officers obtained authentic documentary evidence which proved that internationalist capitalists operating through their international banking houses had financed both sides of every war and revolution fought since 1776. That's Pawns in the Game. The American and British war machines are commanded by men who have all sworn allegiance to the murderous demon gods of the Illuminati. They are sacrificing the lives of your sons and daughters on the altar of the all-seeing eye. And this is Chris Everett. And I believe that to be true, that they love war, they plan war, and they let your children fight in their wars. And people die for their causes, and they just love to cause chaos. This is the memorial for the Battle of Britain in Brussels. I wonder who they fought for. Here's the Illuminati pyramid. Interesting what they've done to us and believe that we're fighting for freedom when they own both sides of the opposition. Here's the Declaration of Independence, or the Declaration, the French Declaration, and you can see the Eye of Lucifer up top. All of this occult symbology. Here's the Mithra, hat of Mithra. This is the Roman fasces. And so we see that symbolism. Look at the documents of the French Revolution. Lightning bolts. You can see the all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Lucifer, hat of Mithra. You see this Ouroboros, the snake biting the tail. Here again, you see all of this going on, and the occult symbolism. Two pillars on both sides, and there's that Eye of Lucifer once more. We have snakes here. Now depictions in artwork. You see the Roman fasces. You see the obelisk, the Mithra, hat of Mithra as well, the Eye of Lucifer. Now look at the artwork again. Now this torch of enlightenment on the head. You can see the square, death, equality, liberty, and fraternity. French Revolution, the Ouroboros around, snake biting the tail. We'll get into that a little bit later. We have now the young Napoleon Bonaparte with all this lightning bolt. They are family members. Their bloodlines end up ruling. They always keep it in the family. Understand this. You don't make it if you're a common man. Department of the Army, and you can see the hat of Mithra for the United States being used. All of this occult symbology, just look at symbols and wonder what they stand for. And you either get the exoteric meaning, but if you really find out, you understand the esoteric meaning, the inside meaning. The Green Dragon Tavern, a planning site for the Boston Tea Party. So understand that our revolution in the United States with Great Britain was a planned event by Freemasons. Paul Revere went and did his famous ride through that the British are coming. Here's the Boston Tea Party, which set up that event, and dressing up like Indians and claiming that the taxes are against the Britons are taxing us to death. And look what the results is: the start of revolution and the Brits. But look at what the flag of the United States actually is. British East India Company trading flag. Here, Stars and Stripes and the Knights Templar cross. You can understand the Knights Templar. Nina Pinta Santa Maria. These are voyages funded by the Knights Templar. City of London and the Knights Templar cross. You also have dragons all over this thing. And then now you can see the British East India Company trading flag. Here's the British flag and the American flag with the stars and stripes. Americans would be fighting under the private flag of an international mercantile corporation controlled by the Jesuits. So this organization was controlled by the Jesuits, as is the British East India Company. They also have the Dutch East India Company. Understand here, after 20 years of constant and most difficult research, I come fearlessly today before the American people to say and prove that the President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by the priests and the Jesuits of Rome. So look, You understand how the mafia works. They set people up. When they don't cooperate, they take them down. Please understand this. This is what's going on. Washington in the lap of Rome. You can read about how the colonial system of Rome is still in existence today. Now let me read this. At an evening session, Franklin turned the meeting over to his newfound and abundantly honored friend. The subject was a flag. Addressing the committee as Comrade Americans, the professor explained that, since the colonies were still dependent upon Great Britain, we are not expected to design or recommend a flag which will represent a new government or an independent nation, but instead one that will testify our present loyalty as English subjects, a flag that was already in use, a flag that had been recognized by the British government for half a century, a flag having a field of alternate horizontal red and white stripes, with the Grand Union flag of Great Britain in the upper left corner. I refer, he said, to the flag of the East India Company. On January 2nd, 1776, at a formal ceremony attended by the Flag Committee, George Washington personally hoisted the East India Company flag upon a towering and specially raised pine tree liberty pole, unfurling it to the breeze and displaying it for the first time to his army, the citizens of the vicinity, and the British forces in Boston. So if you're going to think, and you've been led to believe, that our independence was against Britain and that was against tyranny, they have been shaking hands again on both sides. This whole plan was to create a new nation, an independent nation, but still under the original rule. And so you see that depiction here. Here's Washington, our founding fathers, uncommon heroes, understanding that this is all planned events. And they were planned. Even Franklin himself had a place in Britain after the Revolution and lived there and worked closely with that government over there. This is the Hawaiian flag, and you can see the significance of that being part of the East India Company. East India Company happens to also been the main company involved in the slave trade. Our founding fathers had slaves, and look at the treatment of these slaves. There is a story called Amazing Grace, a movie you can watch, of somebody who repented of doing all of this, and he became a true Christian and did repentance his entire life because he realized what was happening in this era and what he was doing and what he was involved in. This is a slave boat. These are all people packed and crammed in. It is unbelievable how people can even draw this kind of thing up, and it just hurts me. And during a live presentation, gosh, with people in shock, and I see faces, I literally come to tears with seeing stuff like this. So we have here now the Constitution of the Freemasons, and you will realize the similarity between our Constitution, checks and balances, and all of that based in the Constitution of Freemasons. Understanding this is the pure Freemasonic state, and you can see that in the architecture and everything all about it. Oh boy, it looks like freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of everything, and you are literally living in a prison of your mind. Yes, you can go out and have a coffee or what have you, but as far as understanding where you're at and the progression of this society and what it's become, look at it. Proofs of conspiracy. Of against all religion and governments of Europe. I know this is a very poor image, John Adams' library, but there was a understanding there was a conspiracy by Freemasons and the Illuminati. This has been conspiracy, and is not a new thing. It's become a bad word, but is not a new thing to understand that there is a conspiracy going on. You see the Roman fascists in the House of Representatives, in the Senate building, in the Capitol building, and you can see the Roman fascists being used. This is all Rome. And according to Daniel, we understand that the Roman Empire and this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and the interpretation of that dream is the two legs of Rome. I understand some people that are not believers that prophecy is just hocus pocus, but this dream and this interpretation and the prophecy of this world coming true and the Roman Empire being still with us, the two legs of Rome coming into the feet and having the 10 toes. This is a description of even the Club of Rome and the setup of these toes in this final global empire now with us today. And please understand that prophecy is a riddle that we have to understand. And as we get closer to the end here, we see prophecy now coming to full light in the age. Prophecy and my statement on prophecy, the further you're out on prophecy in the past, what you might see happening in the future doesn't seem like it would happen at all until you get closer to that event. So that's my understanding and one explanation of how prophecy works. We can see in the last days things happening that are close to what the prophecy reads. So in this case, this is the Yalta Conference. And this is the victors in World War II. All three men here are Freemasons. Communism, capitalism. Here's Churchill. Looking at Churchill himself, Churchill was installed as a Druid priest in August 1908. So you can see him with the Druids. These are people in the occult. They know the occult thoroughly, and they are part of it thoroughly. All secret society members, all elite bloodlines. Understand this, please. Look at this. Honolulu Advertiser, November 30th, 1 week before Pearl Harbor, Kurusu bluntly warned nation ready for battle. Was this nation ready for battle? Was Pearl Harbor ready? They took the day off on Sunday. All of those planes were lined up. All of that armory was all locked away. Those ships were all lined up at Battleship Row, ripe for the picking. These events are meant to be. They plan these events to get the people all ripe and ready for war. This is the Hilo Tribune. Japan may strike over the weekend. Do you think that we would be sitting around not doing anything, taking the day off, or would we be completely on alert? And they should have been completely on alert. And there's a story about that of ships coming over from the mainland United States to Honolulu. They stopped in the middle of the ocean and waited for the attack to happen so that some of the carriers would be still be alive. But anyway, um, just to show you that history is these are planned events. This is Japan Parliament building, and you can see the Masonic architecture with pyramids. You also have the checkered floors. This is one of the dignitaries' houses. I think it might be the Prime Minister's house. My wife did this research, and you can see the owls perched up above, and that owl symbology. Tokyo Tower is 333 meters high, almost 32 and a half, 333 when you round it off. But interesting numerology going on. Japanese Democratic Party and the eye symbolism on the internet in Japan. They say what's going on here. Again, the variant of the eye symbology, the Mount Fuji in the background, and the eye having, if you look through a light on this currency, the eye is at the top of Mount Fuji. So this eye and the pyramid symbolism. Here's Mao you saw earlier with Dubois. Here's the first Masonic building in China. All of these events, that French Revolution, even the Chinese Revolution, all of these events are perpetrated into this new age, and Mao is the leader as far as how many people were killed under his atheistic, communistic realm. And so please don't tell me that war is a result of religion. Here is a prime example of the most that anyone's ever killed under pure atheistic communism.